Welcome everybody. It's been a while since I've done a video like this, a tips video, but I got one ready for you here. This is going to be season 18 ranked tips. A lot of things have changed, especially from last season. You can no longer ride to masters, or at least ride to diamond. You got to play a hard zone and you got to play very smart. But don't worry, if you're new to this, I got all the tips ready for you. We're going to be talking about dropping in, we're going to be talking about weapons, we're going to be talking about legend selection, and most importantly, rotations. So make sure you stick around for all the tips. All right, so let's get into the first tip. And that first tip is going to be actually before we even play the game, it's going to be your legend selection. Your legend selection is actually very important, especially since they recategorized all of the legends. If you haven't been around for a couple seasons, you wouldn't really know that they recategorized everything, and now the actual categories actually mean something. Those categories range from assault, skirmisher, recon, control, and support. Each category will have their own unique abilities, like support legends being able to craft banners, or control legends be able to scan the beacons and figure out where the zone is, and the recon ones can scan the other types of beacons to figure out where all the players are in the map. So ideally, the best legend selection is probably going to involve some type of support legend. Why? Because that support legend, like I said before, can craft banners for everybody. And since they made the newest change to the support class, as long as there's a support legend on the team, any player of that team can make all banners. So just because you're the last man standing doesn't mean you're totally out. Remember that. Now for the second legend, that's probably the most ideal legend to be on the team, is actually going to be Catalyst, which falls into the control for two reasons. Catalyst's kit is very good for defending a building or defending wherever you're trying to hold out, which is a really big important tip. The second part is that she's the control legend, and since control legends can scan beacons which tell you which zone is coming, you'll have all the zone knowledge that you can then go rotate early and pick up that building that you want to secure. The third legend ideally is anybody that you're most comfortable with, but you can flex. You could play a skirmisher, which is like a Pathfinder, Wraith, Octane, Revenant, which with its new rework is actually pretty sick, Horizon, or Valkyrie, but Valkyrie isn't really used too often. Or you can pick a recon legend like Bloodhound, Seer, and those guys. If I had to assemble my perfect trio at this moment, it would probably be somebody like Loba or Newcastle to fulfill that support class, Catalyst 100%, and I could either pick between Maggie, Ballistic, Revenant, Horizon, or even Wraith. All right, for our next tip is going to be talking about dropping into the actual game. So when you're dropping into the game, you always want to be aware of where everybody else is going. Awareness is 90% of this game. If you're going to go drop into a POI, I would always recommend to either drop into an uncontested POI or a POI that's nobody else is going to be landing at, or you could try to take the 50-50 off drop, which means you're going to fight with at least one other team on that POI. If you're dropping in and you see that there's another team not too far away, maybe it's not the best idea to 50-50, because if you don't clean up that first fight very quickly, that other team is going to come in and third party you and ruin your game. You also have the opportunity to be that third party where you can see two teams landing at the same POI. You can land just outside of it depending on what it is. Maybe it has enough loot for your team and you guys get blessed, and you go and wait for the fight. You go in third party at the right moment and you clean up that whole POI and the rest of it's yours along with all that loot. Those are your general options, but you do have to have awareness, because without awareness, you're not going to be able to make these decisions correctly. Now for the third tip, when it comes down to looting, you don't want to take too long. Depending on where you're at in zone, if you're outside of zone, especially in the deep end of it, if the zone's on the other side of the map, you don't want to spend too long because the zone did increase in damage. So what was originally the first zone is basically the second zone, and what the second zone is the third zone, so on and so forth. Don't get caught out without enough meds, and next thing you know, you can't rotate into zone. This is where your control legend is going to come up clutch, because you're at least going to have some zone knowledge as long as you drop into a POI or possibly rotate to another POI that has the beacon where you can scan the zone. Now, since we're talking about looting, let's go over some weapons that are probably really ideal for season 18. Mostly you're going to use weapons that you're pretty comfortable with, but this season you're definitely going to want to pay attention to the Hemlock, the 30-30, the Scout, the Triple Take, R9, Volt, Alternator, Car. Those are the main guns that I've been running into a lot this season, especially the 30-30. A lot of people are using marksman rifles to get big kills and big finishes from distance so that they can gain points without giving up their position. If you can get a 30-30 with a skull piercer, that thing goes absolutely crazy. And I'm personally finding that the Triple Take is actually really good, and I'm so sad that I never really used it before. The Hemlock is also crazy because they took it out of the care package and they didn't actually change that much of the damage. It went from about 23 damage per hit to only to 22, so they didn't really nerf it, and it's still basically a care package gun but on the ground. R301 is still very good, same as the Flatline. For your SMGs, the R99 is still pretty solid, but they did nerf the magazine count, especially without a mag. It went from 19 to 17. So those 2 missing bullets, it really does make a difference, trust me. And because they made that change, the car is actually going to take the #1 top spot, because at least if you pick it up off drop, it's still very, very good without a mag. The alternator is also a very good pick, especially if you can find the gold version of it or get disruptor rounds, because the disruptor rounds really tear through shields. You could do a lot of damage in about 1 to 2 clips. The Vault is the all-around most balanced SMG. There's not much to say about that. Now, when it comes to shotguns, the Peacekeeper is probably going to be my favorite pick, mainly because with the gold bolt and the disruptor rounds, you're doing high damage very quickly. And the 4th tip is actually going to be liking this video and subbing to the channel. And if you really want to support this channel, you can actually join and become a member. The link is in the description down below. Also, as a side note, I do stream to this YouTube channel all the time, quite often. So if you do sub, you'll be able to get all those notifications. So make sure you do. Now, before we get into the most important tip that's going to gain you the most amount of points in ranked for season 18, we're going to talk about the map rotation. Now, for right now, the first half of season 18 in ranked, the map rotation is Broken Moon, Kings Canyon, and Olympus. Love it or hate it, those are the 3 maps that they put in for this season. So if you don't like a particular map, let's say Broken Moon, you could just wait out a day. Why? Because last season they put in a brand new change. Every day is going to be a different map. So if you don't like Broken Moon, just wait for the next day and maybe you'll get Kings Canyon. And then if you like Kings Canyon, play King Canyon. And if you don't like Kings Canyon, well, at least you have Olympus. If there's a particular map that you happen to do better on, but you may not necessarily like Broken Moon, for some reason I tend to gain a lot of LP on Broken Moon days. Although I don't really like the map, at least I know I gain a lot on Broken Moon. So let's try to take advantage of this. And now for the final most important tip is gonna be rotating. Rotating is gonna allow you to gain the most amount of points as long as you stay smart about it. So for first zone, you're mostly going to do your fighting off drop, your 50-50, maybe getting a cheesy 3rd-party kill, but you're going to get mostly of your loot and avoiding most fights. You definitely want to stay away from center zone, because if you fight center zone, literally the whole map is going to converge onto your location, and it's going to be 19 3rd parties. It's going to be a lot of fun. By a 2nd zone, you should have finalized your loot, what 2 weapons you're going to run for that game, and enough batteries that you can take on most fights. If you have some kills going into zone 3, you're in a really good spot. I would definitely just hang out. By the start of zone 3, as long as the lobby didn't get absolutely just torched, there should be anywhere from 12 to 15 teams in that zone. And at this point in the 3rd zone, you should be paying attention to where the map is pulling towards and finding a spot in that game, whether it's a building or high ground. As long as you get the top 10, you'll have 0 LP points, especially with kills on the board, which means that the next set of kills or the next set of placement points that you will get, at least will give you to a positive game. While you're in 3rd zone, you should definitely be trying to figure out where you want to end up for the final zone. You should also be generally aware of where most teams are going to be or where are they currently fighting, and avoid that area. If you're close to 2 teams that are fighting, use that opportunity to just sneak past around them and go towards your final zone area. Once you get into your final zone area, whether it's a building or high ground, make sure you defend your post and show presence. You want to make sure you hold other people out. Don't take too much damage in the meantime, but make sure you defend your post. Don't give up your spot for a cheap kill. Also, you don't want to give up a potential god spot or a really, really good spot just for 1 or 2 kills. If you really have to go get it and you have to capitalize on it, make sure somebody anchors that they can call the team back. Sometimes, depending on how the game plays out, the spot that you want to get and other spots surrounding it that are pretty good secondaries, they're not available. So you only have one real option. You can either fight for it or you can try your best to play around it while avoiding as many line of sights as you can. It's pretty tough, but it is very doable. If you ever seen Pro League or if you watch the pros, there's been plenty of times where there's a building and there's one team on the inside, but there's another team on top of the building, and it's still very much playable because you know the bottom team won't really be able to fight you without getting shot in the back, and all you have to do is worry about everybody in front of you. If you do have to fight, make sure it's quick. If the fight is not really going anywhere and you can't get a good entry knock, I wouldn't recommend doing it. If you get into the 4th and 5th zone and you realize that there's still a lot of teams left, listen, be on the lookout for rats. Try to get the eliminations and get that placement points. Not only will you get the kill, but the placement points are way bigger. But like I said, don't give up a good spot just for a rat. If anything, hold them out until the next ring comes. Somebody else will get them. If you don't get the kill, you'll definitely at least get the placement points. And that's where you're going to get all your points and able to climb out to diamond. Well, guys, those are going to be all the tips I give you for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.